Hi everybody, and welcome to this tutorial where we are going to draw the eye. It's 1 out of 4. So first we studied the ear, then the mouth, then the nose. And now the eye is going to be drawn. And what I did first is I've drawn in that piece of clay that I wanted to show also once studying the eye. Otherwise we would have an eye just floating in the air actually. And what I then check is whether the inner eye corner and the outer eye corner, how they are aligned. Some are upwards, some are downwards, and in this case it's quite horizontal. And I am imagining a ball, the eyeball, and then the eyelid going over that ball here. So here you can see the shape of the eye as I'm seeing it in my reference picture. And what I do next is I start figuring out how the iris is behaving in comparison with the upper and lower eyelid. And I can see that the iris is just touching the lower eyelid. And, and the actual eyelids themselves have 2 lines, of course. And that is the thickness of the eyelids. And what is also very important, that is the shadow casted by the upper eyelid on top of the eyeball itself. So that's the first. That's the first important things that I'm carefully watching once I make my setup for the eye. So thinking of the thickness of the eyelids, the roundness of the eyeball itself, and the casted shadow. So I've put those all in. I've also placed in the eyebrow, and here you can see the eye socket. And the eye socket is just next to the bridge of the nose that I've also drawn in to make an actual drawing and an actual study of the eye. And should you be interested, on my Patreon page I explain all about the anatomy of the eye, and you can draw along with me in real time, of course. So if you really want to get to know and to improve your portrait drawings, please visit me on my Patreon page. Now I know where the eye socket is, and this is the inner corner of the eye. And you can see that there are highlights and lowlights there inside too. And also for the lower eyelid, that part is catching a lot of shadow except for the inner eyelid. And here you can see some wrinkles going on the side of the eye. So I'm pointing those out too in my setup. And I'm going to render it all out, but first I want to put in the first major important setup lines before to start and render everything in to achieve an as good as possible 3D effect. And what I am studying are gray values. So how are the gray values sitting next to each other, and together they should help me to create a very convincing effect of this eye study. And I'm using just a simple charcoal, compressed charcoal pencil. Mine is by Wolf's Carbon, and I'm just using the Ami newsprint paper. It's just a very cheap sketching paper. And these tools are ideal for studies, and they will bring you a lot of inside knowledge to make it your own and to improve your realistic drawing. Now the most shadow is casted underneath the upper eyelid, as you can see, and also in the eye socket and on the bottom plane of that piece of clay that I'm trying to draw. And on the side of the nose bridge there is there are some gray scales too. So I simply try to cover the eye, but also the skin that surrounds the eye, because if you were just drawing an eye with no skin whatsoever, then that's an okay study. But the best studies are done by also drawing in the surrounding of the eye and how the eye is placed in comparison with the surroundings. So that would make your eye study complete. And in that way, it's not a floating eye in space, but it's an actual eye that is accurately placed within the eye socket and with all the wrinkly skin that's around it. And that's the perfect eye study from my point of view. Now here you can see a little bit of the wrinkles that are going to the front of the face, that big bone sculpt that is on top in the center, just on top of the nose. And I want to draw that piece of face too, of course. And how that piece of nose is gradually going over into that eye socket. And here you can just see the side of the face a little bit. So I want to draw that into. And this is where the eye is moving around the corner, kind of. And so I really want to express the roundness of the face and all those little wrinkles that are they are shaped by the eye itself, actually. You can see the actual eyeball itself, and you can just see the double lines, and you can see the thickness of the lower eyelid. And I gradually also build up my darkest values. So I go in the first layer very light, and then I simply put in layer over layer to get that feel of darkness, and then slowly building it up. You can see a sharp edge here for shadow and light. Now once I have enough information on the paper, I start to watch closer and closer for the details, and you can actually see that the lens is the cornea is rounded, while the iris and the pupil is laying deeper. They are laying in a dish. And I'm explaining about this on my Patreon page, of course. And this is the brush. Then when I'm at this stage, I want to push in all the little pigments into the newsprint paper. And then I take my pencil eraser and I start drawing back in the light. And this is where the fun starts, of course. And this is also where you can start pushing up the contrasts. So I'm erasing that thin layer of the pigments that I've brushed. I've brushed it in real hard into the newsprint paper. And then I can just simply put some highlights for the greasy skin. Our skin is always a little bit greasy, and in that way it grasps a little bit of highlights. And with the pencil eraser, and you can see it here, you can easily just get those fine lines in, for instance, for the thickness of the lower eyelid, the highlight upon the pupil. And once you get those highlights in, then you can go back in with the charcoal pencil, and you can start pushing up the contrast even more, and then you get that actual 3D effect. And so at that final stage, I refine the lines, and I can put in that little wrinkle here, just be on top of the eyelid, make it pop out even more. Or use the blender stick, as you can see here. With the blender stick you can also push in the pigments even deeper into the paper. So, well, this is my study, and it's just a sketch, but it brings me a lot of realism, and well, this is a great way to study. So, well, I wish you good luck, of course. If you want to learn more, you can visit me on my Patreon page, of course. And you can see the real-time tutorials, loads of them, over 100. So check it out, and otherwise thank you for watching, and I will see you again in my next tutorial.